and welcome again to BUS591 Corporate Crime and Corporate Governance. And last week we talked about the different kinds of risk, and I gave you some examples in the lecture. And it was what had occurred during my career, and what happened in practice is totally different. So this week we can look at different aspects of that and see how we can manage risk and how we can manage it to make it more effective. But before starting on that, I'd like to go through the assessment we're going to be doing at the end of the session. So you begin to think about it over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then when we come to do the assignment, we'll be up to speed and it'll be quite easy to do and to get the required marks. And I will work with you as we go through that, and we'll make sure you do a case study. So therefore, we discussed last week how organisations are having to adapt and how it's all coming together in terms of the way that the world is going. And we'll look at an introduction. So when we come to do the assignment, we'll work around the words of somewhere in the region of 2000. And then we'll get a strategy and we'll get the different aspects of it, and I'll give you a kind of lead as to how we're going to do that. So don't worry about the assessment. It doesn't have to be in until the 1st of November, so we've got plenty of time to work on it. It'll be approximately 2,000 words. So what we want to do now is look at a theme of how we're going to do it, and then we can work out the different risk assessments that we need to look at. So today we're going to look at the different parts of the crime and different parts of the risk management. We said enterprise management was very different, and so we're going to define it as it's very simple and not too complicated. But there will be issues that are complicated, and these are to do with the scams that we're all very familiar with and how it all happens. And we decide how we're going to do that, and we'll look at different models because the IT world and the web has opened up a different way. There are standards, and there's institutional risk management that control these things. They are acute, and they give you guidelines, which you'll see in the lecture notes I've given you, and you'll also see in the lecture that I recorded prior to this. So we'll look at the different kinds of ISOs, and we'll look at the different kinds of risk enterprises that are out there, and then we can produce a kind of architectural model, and we can discuss that and have some fun by looking at it. So one of the major tools of this is how it all comes together and where the different kinds of people are involved and who is responsible. We said before that the committee structure is there, but who takes responsibility? Is it directors? Is it the individuals? Are it people? Is it internal? Is it external? There's lots of variations of where the different kind of references and who the internal copying or reporting requirements are, and also the external assessments that are bringing risk management to the fore. So you need a kind of assurance that it's all going to happen, and part of that is going to be the structure that we're going to look at and then we're going to bring forward. So if this is the way we're going to look at it, we need to say that the lectures are going to give you the different aspects that you can look and bring forward. So the model we're going to look at is one that embeds the risk management, and that will give you an appetite for the subject, I hope. And look at the strategy and the benchmarks and see how we can perform and identify what that risk is. And in today's lecture, having looked at it before we start, you'll have seen the different slides and how it all links together. So underneath this we have a kind of situation where it applies and how successful it is in controlling it and assessing it and being aware of what it brings forward, and look at the standards and how the standards are applied, which is very important. And we have international standards of accounting, which people say these are the audit figures, this is how it should be presented, so we can see if there has been any kind of fraud or has been some compliance that's been ignored, and we can take it from there. So in terms of looking at that, we can say the risk is either very high or very low, very simple or very complicated. Or we're going to say, is it just a case of there's been an error or someone has done it intentionally? Or is it a kind of fraud that's been planned and is being executed in a very wide way? So all those kind of models we can look at and we're going to talk about as we go through the different aspects of the course. So we'll look at the structure and I'll give you examples of the industries that I've worked in, ranging from finance, banking, to films, to media, to sport, to golf, to pubs, to bars, to property, so on and so forth, and also in kinds of making food where the risk management is there for hygiene and food poisoning and things of that nature, which we have to be very careful of. And we'll look at that risk and see how it all comes together and what I do to protect it. Because now, with the new legislation, there is corporate manslaughter, there is corporate responsibility, and directors can go to jail if they don't behave themselves or do it properly. So we'll look how we collect the data, we'll look at the internal reporting requirements, and we'll see where the world has gone in terms of avoiding it, because now business is international, and with the international business, each country will have different standards, different degrees of risk, and also the different kinds of white-collar crime, or whatever crime you want to call it, in terms of robbing the community, robbing the corporation, or robbing the government. So these are big, gusty areas, and they embrace a lot of management controls and the ethos of different kinds of management depending on the company. Some are high-risk companies, some are very low-risk companies. Some are traditional companies like engineering, some are new IT companies, Silicon Valley, websites, bitcoins, all those kind of things have all come forward, and we have to be aware of them to see how we can actually be controlling, how we can limit the limitations to where the crime or the risk is assessed. So that's what we're going to be doing in today's lecture. Have a look at the lecture that we've done. I've posted on Moodle for you, and we'll go through those slides, and during the course of the session, when we start formally at 10 o'clock again, we can start putting together in the lecture theatre B118, we can put together a kind of session whereby we're looking at the ethics, we're looking at case studies, we're looking at different debating issues, and we can do a summary on the lecture that you've previously looked at and that I recorded for you. And we can see how those controls, how the roles and procedures of management, the stakeholders, the shareholders, the individuals are all there. And we look at this from not only an organisation's perspective, but also the individual who wants to take things away, and either legally or illegally. So once we define that, we're going to look at it and say, how do we put in training, schedules and procedures to protect it? So that's what we're going to do in lecture 2, and we'll meet on Monday, 10 o'clock, room B118. But please come early if you want to, because I'll be there from 9 o'clock to answer any questions, or if you're struggling, then we can pull it together. Look forward to seeing you. Bye for now.